I got a question. I'm a bit confused about this campaign that's going on. I'm really confused about it, right? So I'm not going to name any names, but there's a campaign and the cameras are put into a chicken farm, end of lay, so free range chicken farm. At the end of the time for them, which is often 12 to 18 months, maybe 2 years, I don't know whether they still use forced molting, but that was a way to extend their laying season. But I mean, the hens are still relatively young. So then it's time to be taken to the house of slaughter, right? There are these, as it were, professional chicken catchers that are employed to catch them and put them into the transporter things and bung them on a lorry, right? And they've got to work pretty quick, which is pretty standard in that industry. And so when they put the camera in this particular farm, they found lots of rights violations, as you would if you put a camera in just about any farm. Well, in fact, in every single farm. So then the big fuss then was the fact that this chicken catching team was accredited by the RSPCA. So they were part of the RSPCA, high welfare standards type routine. And so then there was a campaign to get everybody to petition the RSPCA to drop this firm from their list. Now, the RSPCA have got a number of sanctions that they can invoke if there's a problem with the people that they've given a certificate to, as it were. Like they can tell them off, or can give them advice, give them a warning, or then they can suspend their accreditation, or they can end their accreditation, or they can even send them to be prosecuted. So presumably, put together a file and send it off to the cops, I suppose it's something like that. Now, I don't know exactly which one of these sanctions the RSPCA has imposed on this particular chicken catching firm, but something has happened in the sense that the group that filmed it announced it as being a major victory for the other animals that the RSPCA have been forced to drop them. So the RSPCA have been forced to fire this company or take away its accreditation. Now, I want to know a couple of things about this because it kind of doesn't really make much sense to me as an animal rights idea, because what now? I mean, the chances are that another cycle has been since this expose. It's probably taken quite a while to get it all together and all that. So what happened next, or what is going to happen next when it's time to catch the hens again? Are the same teams still there, but now they haven't got RSPCA accreditation, and that's all? Or have they been fired and they've got some new chicken catchers who will promise to abide by the RSPCA rules better than the first lot? Or if they can't get a new group of chicken catchers to replace the first lot, are the group that put the cameras in, are they gonna catch the birds? Because it seems to me that there's no kind of follow-up knowledge about this. There's been a big kind of big victory, but I don't know what it means for the actual birds. So you were talking about victims, Andy. So in terms of the victims, what does this entire scenario even mean?
Well, in terms of the victims, not a lot, because even if you look through some of the hypotheticals, the team have been replaced. The team have had their RSPCA assurance stripped. The team have been fined. None of that changes anything about the circumstances for the victims, even if treatment is your focus. Because it's either they're not going to be able to sell them for a higher price, which is essentially the assurance. The team have been fined, which means they'll just be replaced with like-for-like people. I mean, it's kind of the similar when these slaughterhouses get shut down for financial reasons and stuff. If this is already one of the best ones in operation, who's coming in to take their place? Was there a team of chicken catchers just stood around unemployed that are better than the ones that they've just got rid of? Unlikely. So they're potentially going to be people that they've scrounged around. I sometimes I can't actually
Well, they
say.
might not be able to get rid of them, Andy, if they haven't got anyone to replace them.
This is what I'm saying. Sometimes I don't actually know whether these things that we class as victories are victories at all from the actual victim's point of view. I mean, in terms of on paper and in terms of celebrating something, it gives us something. But when you actually look at it from the victim's point of view, often it gets worse. I mean, sometimes when these places get shut down, it means the amount of animals getting divided between 2 or 3 other places at far further distances is now increased. So we're not actually reducing the numbers of animals that are being used in this way.
Yeah, what happened when all the local slaughterhouses started getting closed down. They just ended up going.
And then I mean, and without knowing the information, something very similar could happen. If they could just be moved to somewhere else, or they bring in someone else, or even they're going to make a better effort for 3 or 4 months until all this blows over.
Yeah, and then of course you've got the terrible thing about if the RSPCA decide to suspend their accreditation and then do an inquiry, and then a couple of individuals get fired, they get replaced, and then they say, okay, what happened again? Usual stuff, one bad apple, all that kind of stuff, and then the RSPCA give them the accreditation back. What the public are going to take from that? Oh, everything's fine now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other sort of thing that you can get from this, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to the group that have put the cameras and stuff in there, but every time that something like this happens and you use expose footage or undercover footage that's been gained, and there might be a slap on the wrist or a couple of changes legislative wise, but nothing else changes. The next time you want to try and put a camera in there, it's going to be real hard. The only thing really that's going to change from a lot of this stuff is the level of effort that they put in to conceal what they're doing. That's the only thing that ever seems to change in these situations. They just make a lot more effort and spend a lot more money to keep what they're doing a secret. It's not like someone's looking at this situation and saying, this has got to stop. These standards are terrible. The RSPCA are supposed to be there to adhere these standards and make sure that they're held to, and they don't do that, so let's scrap the whole system. As you say, people will just expect the RSPCA to go in there and clean the place up. That's the level of expectation. No one's expecting any different than that. The victims are irrelevant. The only people really that are getting any criticism here is that team. And they'll just get replaced or paid off or fined or whatever. And they will just be replaced with other people, because nothing about the mentality has changed. The same number of chickens are still in demand. So someone's got to do it.
Ronnie, are you up to speed with this story?
Maybe not totally up to the very, very latest news, but you see, my general view is that for as long as people consume, animal products, for as long as people consume the products produced by these hens, in other words, the eggs, then this situation is going to go on. It's going to continue whether one team is replaced by another or whether they use a different slaughterhouse, because I would imagine that the team they used would be connected to a particular slaughterhouse, and they come from the slaughterhouse to kind of gather up the chickens, don't they, the hens, and then take them off to the slaughterhouse. But however that changes, the situation remains the same, that these birds are going to be taken off to slaughter after having lived a tiny fraction of what would be their natural lifespan.
Yeah, and there might not be any connection with the slaughterhouse thing, though, because, if the problem was the catching, then the slaughterhouse, that's kind of like the next step, isn't it?
I was just wondering whether the catchers actually are employed by the slaughterhouse and come out from the slaughterhouse to catch the birds, so to speak, and so they're part of the slaughterhouse team. I don't really know how it works, but in any event, whatever the situation, for as long as people continue to consume those products, this situation is going to continue, and I think it's I think it's a huge sort of misuse of energy on behalf of this organisation, a huge misuse of energy, a huge misuse of resources, and misuse of resources of campaigners who they're encouraging to get involved in this. That time, energy, money, all of that should just be put into vegan education.